Scott, there's a whole subgroup of the population that still thinks that the lockdowns were too stringent and that we did too much in terms of hurting the economy, and that for example, in New York, instead of closing down the economy and not protecting elderly people, you should have protected the elderly people and left more things open. We're still dealing with that. In fact, there's a journal piece yesterday from James Freeman that says, did Trump downplay COVID enough among a political class of overreactors? The president resisted panic and prevented even more authoritarian responses to COVID-19. So there's a way out on that side. There are people that are saying we already did too much from the panic. And the reason we're having somewhat of a V-shaped recovery is because we didn't overreact.
Well, so let me give you my perspective on that. We absolutely had to shut down New York City and do what we did in New York City, and probably did a little too late. The healthcare system in New York, the biggest, largest, best healthcare system in the world, was literally on the brink of collapse. It was a COVID-only healthcare system for a period of time. We probably had to implement a stay-at-home order in cities like Louisiana, Detroit, maybe Chicago. Did we have to do it in Dallas? Probably not. Did we have to do it at that time in Miami? Probably not. But we had no idea where the virus was and was not spreading because we didn't have diagnostic testing. I think when history looks back on this, the lack of situational awareness at that time is going to be remembered as the great failing, because we had to assume that it was spreading far more widely in the United States at that point in time than it was. And had we not shut down the South at that time, and it wasn't spreading there, when it eventually got to the South, maybe we would have had more support for mitigation steps when we needed them. But by that time, people were exhausted and weren't going to support the more stringent mitigation. So ideally what we should have been able to do, and this was part of the pandemic planning in 2006, the pandemic planning always assumed that you'd have a diagnostic test and you'd be able to know where the virus was spreading, and you would just implement the mitigation where it was spreading. But back in March and back in February and March, we had to assume it was spreading everywhere because we had no testing. That's going to be looked back at the key missing element here in trying to titrate a more effective response.
That was a CDC reagent problem, right? At the time.
It wasn't just CDC. I mean, CDC didn't have the diagnostic test available as they should have to roll out. But we should have worked much earlier in January with the large commercial labs like LabCorp and Quest. The minute this pathogen became manifest, we should have been working with the big labs that had the capacity to implement testing. It takes them a month or two to come online. We eventually did that, but we didn't do it till March, and their capacity didn't come online really until April. Or we did it late February, actually.